Hello, my name is Ryan Bennett-Clarke and I'm a psychotherapist and clinical supervisor. For the past 15 years, I've worked both in the NHS and in private practice. Prior to this, in 2003, I began training as a mental health nurse and in 2005 worked in child and adolescent mental health services for the final year of my training. In 2006, I began work as a forensic community psychiatric nurse in an all-male prison for 3 years before commencing my psychotherapy training in 2008. For the past 20 years, working previously as a psychiatric nurse but now as a psychotherapist, I've listened to stories of people who have been the victims of bullying and the long-lasting impact that this has had on their mental health, their self-esteem, their ability to form and maintain relationships, and the impact on their lives generally, even years after the event. Bullying can leave children feeling depressed, lonely, frightened, confused, hated and worthless and ashamed, and these feelings can and often are carried throughout the life of the child. As a psychotherapist, I have a particular interest in the themes of envy and stalking, and when speaking about these in some of my academic writings and on a podcast show that I was invited to be a part of, I drew some comparisons between the ways in which stalking behaviour can be mirrored in bullying and harassment in school settings. For example, the relentless pursuit of another person that can cause mental, emotional and physical distress, a series of behaviours towards another person that can cause them to feel frightened and unsafe, and repeated patterns of behaviour that the bully continues whilst knowing that this is likely to cause distress to the person who is being bullied. And also for the person who is being bullied, there is a belief that there is no escape, which can lead to a constant state of fear, anticipation, and a sense of threat which adversely impacts their mental health, even when they're away from the school or home environment. This can even be greater thanks to mobile phones and the various forms of social media sites that young people and adults now have access to, meaning that the bullying is not just restricted to the classroom, the playground, or the journey to and from school. In fact, bullying and harassment can be continued at any time, on any day. In my therapeutic work, I also explore envy as an additional driving factor in some stalking behaviour, but also in bullying. And this is something that I would like to raise awareness of today because of the harmful and confusing psychological impact that this emotion can create within the victim of bullying. So envy is the angry feeling that we experience in response to someone having something that we ourselves want but are lacking, and we see them enjoying this. This can be anything from happiness, confidence, contentment, friendships, a safe and happy family, acceptance of oneself, uniqueness, a certain physical look or style, a certain body type, intellect, wealth, possessions, or simply appearing to be without envy. Now, everyday envy can motivate us to channel our energy and efforts into seeking the things that we crave, but on our own merit, and to create opportunities for ourselves. However, toxic envy is when there is an impulse to take from the person whom we envy, and to also actively contaminate and spoil that which is perceived to be enviable. The spoiling and contaminating aspects of this comes in the form of making the person being envied, or in this case bullied, feel all of the unwanted emotions and aspects of self that the envious person hates about themselves and needs to be rid of. Harmful and toxic envy will manifest due to a chronic absence of love, safety, security, and consistent nurturing during a child's early history. This can leave the child with a chronic sense of lack and hunger for something which has not been available to them in their earliest relationships in infancy. Early experiences of love and care need to be predictable and consistent so that over time the child is able to internalise this and draw upon it when needed, even in the absence of the loving, nurturing person being present. Now, bullying can manifest if a child is made to feel afraid at home or is made to feel bad, worthless, criticised or even hated. The presence of someone else who seems to possess a sense of safety or confidence, or is indeed well liked by their peers and teachers, can evoke powerful feelings of envy and resentment, and subsequent bullying behaviours can then emerge from the bully. The goal of this will be to attack and spoil the envied qualities in the other person so that they are no longer a source of envy. The envied child becomes devalued and spoiled instead. Equally, the bully may wish to disown their own feelings of inadequacy, their own shame, self-loathing, or feelings of powerlessness by making the children whom they bully feel equally as powerless, denigrated, worthless, and unsafe. The envy that the bully then feels may not always be within their conscious awareness, but the desire to harm or cause distress very much is. For the child who is being bullied, especially when envious attacks are an issue here, they can be left feeling isolated and alone, frightened and confused, and not sure about what they're feeling, and may even start to believe things about themselves which are not true. For example, feeling inadequate, worthless, hopeless, ashamed, unloved, and generally starting to experience a feeling of self-loathing or that they are bad in some way, and therefore deserving of punishment. So a common defense that people can unconsciously draw upon to protect themselves from current and future envious attacks and bullying is devaluation of self. The logic behind this defense is that if we take good things away from ourselves first, or indeed spoil our own goodness, then we will no longer be deemed enviable and will therefore be safe from attack. This may look like the child dimming their own shine by not speaking up in class when they know the answer to a question for fear of attack and ridicule. They may stop doing activities that they love because these have been spoiled by others, or increase the likelihood of them feeling seen and therefore potentially attacked. The child may begin changing their appearance or not engaging in self-care. They may begin to harm themselves in various different ways, or they may withdraw and become a ghost of their former self. These defences will usually manifest when the child who is being bullied feels alone and unsupported by people who have the power to protect them. If a child is being bullied and they come to you for support, first and foremost, let that child know that you believe them and are prepared to do whatever it takes to help them feel safe. Children who are being bullied, whether it be at home, by a sibling or a parent, at school by a peer or even a teacher, will often feel afraid, confused, lonely and isolated because of their experiences. They may not understand what is happening to them, why, or even have the words to properly articulate their experience. It's your role to help them find the words and to help them make sense of the experience. Naming the bullying for what it is gives both you and the child something to work with and an opportunity then to gather as much information about the child's experience. Now here it's important that the child feels that they are being taken seriously. The common advice given in the 80s of just stay away from them is not helpful advice, as this diminishes the impact and the chronic state of fear and apprehension that a child can feel in the face of an ever-present threat. Now, the bullied child would often feel a sense of being unloved. They may even feel hated, worthless, not good enough, misunderstood, frightened, alone, and ashamed. Now, if we think about these feelings within the context of envious attacks, the bullied child can be left feeling the unwanted and hated aspects of the self that the bully needs to escape from within themselves. So it's therefore necessary to help the child who is being bullied to understand that some of the overwhelming feelings that they are experiencing might actually belong to the bully. Now, there is power in knowing that the bully is trying to make other people feel as bad as they feel. It can also be helpful to discuss some of the reasons why the bully is behaving in that way. So, not because this justifies the bully's actions, but to further emphasise that what is being played out is the problem of the other person and certainly not the fault of the child who is being bullied. Now, something important to remember is that bullies will often target people whom they perceive as being vulnerable, so it's important to explore with the child who is being bullied if there are other areas in their life where they are feeling unsafe and perhaps in need of extra support. Now, when a child is being bullied, especially when these attacks are fueled by envy, the child can feel as though good things in their life are being spoiled and taken away. This is not just restricted to activities that they enjoy, but can also be qualities within themselves that were once celebrated and cherished. And these can then all of a sudden become the source of shame and fear because of the anticipation that these aspects of their identity are going to be annihilated by others. So the sad consequence of this is a child who begins to fade and hide their shine from the world. Here, It is vital to continue to reflect back the wonderful and unique qualities of that child. Remind them that they are loved for who they are and celebrate their unique qualities with them. Helping them to continue doing things that bring them enjoyment is vital, as well as continuing to remind them how much they are loved and cared about by you. Now, depending on the context of the bullying and the various different ways that the bullying may be enacted, daily life may no longer feel safe for the child. So in such cases, the child who is being bullied needs an advocate, a protector, someone who will take the steps to keep them safe that they may not be able to do for themselves. This may involve speaking to members of staff within the school if this is where the bullying is taking place, or inviting the parents to engage in a discussion or family therapy if the bullying is taking place at home, so that safe and healthy solutions to the problem can be explored without the child feeling that they are to blame for what is happening, because they aren't. Now, children will often try and make sense of frightening and overwhelming situations by blaming themselves. This is usually because the perpetrator of fear in these situations will both abdicate from responsibility themselves, but also project this onto the person who is being bullied. The child may also blame themselves in an attempt to reclaim a sense of control and meaning making. If they see themselves as being the problem, they create a sense of safety by then changing themselves and believing that this is the solution. But sadly, this only provides a temporary sense of relief, and also ultimately means that they grow up believing a lie about themselves. It's crucial that you help the child to recognise that they are not the problem and that you will support them in finding a resolution whereby the people who are causing the harm will be held accountable. Now, if the bully escalates or the bullying escalates to such a level where physical or sexual violence, harassment or stalking, including cyber stalking, becomes manifest, then it's important to contact your local victim support organisation or the police and the school where the bullying may be taking place. Where possible, helping the child to discern who is and who isn't safe to be around is vital, as is empowering them to be able to make choices to end relationships that are ultimately quite harmful for them. In cases where the bullying is coming from an authority figure in the child's life, a more robust and proactive approach must be taken to help keep the child safe and to be an advocate on their behalf until such a time where they are able to find their voice. Supportive, caring and loving friends. My experiences with them helped me to feel valued and accepted, so that even when I experienced envious attacks and bullying, I was still able to hold a sense of my own worth and goodness. Now, this can be further strengthened by the consistent and predictable love, care and nurturing that a child needs to experience within their family too. Now, as we live in a time where children have access to mobile phones and various forms of social media accounts, having open and healthy discussions with the child about what is and isn't posted and what is and isn't appropriate can be helpful for establishing safety and boundaries, whilst also facilitating open dialogue if the bullying and envious attacks extend to trolling and cyberstalking. Now, if this is the case, then keep a record and copies of these harmful interactions, report the incidents to the various social media platforms, and explore ways in which the child can keep their account safe, report and block future cyber attacks, and if necessary, contact the police if these escalate to a point of threat and danger. The final piece of advice that I will leave you with here is for us to be vigilant of changes in a child's behaviour and presentation. They may feel afraid to talk about the bullying that they are experiencing, either for fear of not being believed or because of fears of some kind of repercussion. It's important that we recognise these signs and create a safe space where the child is able to open up about their experiences. Ultimately, demonstrate compassion, understanding, a willingness to listen, and a willingness to help. Explore ways in which they can keep and reclaim the parts of themselves that they feel have been spoiled or contaminated by the envious attacks and bullying, and remind them that they themselves are not to blame for what has happened to them, and help them disentangle the harmful lies about themselves that the bully has made them believe. So what do you do if your own child is the one who is doing the bullying? Now, firstly, it's important to confront that behaviour head on so that understanding and meaning can be acquired, as this can interrupt harmful patterns and facilitate change. Ask them directly why they are doing what they are doing. Now, there may be many reasons which are not in the child's conscious awareness, but it is important to invite them to take ownership of what they are doing and to consider the reasons why. Children will often communicate unspoken feelings of hurt and rage through their actions, and also fear. It is important to consider what else might be going on in the bullying child's life and what their behaviour might be a manifestation of. Sometimes children who feel bullied and afraid at home will seek to put their frightened and vulnerable parts of self into others, and they do this by modelling themselves on powerful and aggressive others in their life. Your role is to help them to understand some of these reasons, but to also reflect on the impact that their behaviour is having on another human being, and to educate them about what the long-term impact of bullying can be on another person. As parents, it's important to consider what behaviours the child may be copying from the home environment and ways in which these can be interrupted and changed by you. It is also important to consider what messages the child has internalised from the interactions between people in the home, what behaviours are seen as acceptable and unacceptable and could be harmful, but also what messages around acceptance of difference have been internalised. Children act out what they see and what they know, and it is uncomfortable but a necessary task for you as parents to reflect on your own beliefs and behaviours and how these could be adversely impacting and influencing the emotional state of your child, but also their behaviour. And it's also possible that the child is experiencing or has experienced some form of bullying or abuse in other areas of their life, away from the home or in the home, which may be adversely impacting their behaviour. As such, it's crucial to understand what else might be playing out beneath the surface, rather than moving straight towards a place of punishment or even anger towards the child who is being a bully. As we've discussed previously, bullying can manifest as a result of envy due to a chronic sense of lack within the bully themselves. Exploring with the child how they can find enjoyment and gratitude for what they have, as well as identifying areas where there is a lack, and then exploring healthy ways in which they can work towards acquiring what they want, or being who they want to be, without having to take from the other or hurt or spoil other people in the process. Now, from a relational perspective, it is important to find the balance between being firm, holding boundaries, and holding the child accountable for their actions and the impact on others, whilst also demonstrating compassion, understanding, and showing the child love and nurturing. The core process here is separating the child's actions from who they are as a person. Feelings of guilt can be appropriate when they facilitate learning, growth, and interrupt harmful patterns of behaviour from being repeated. However, inducing shame within the child and making them believe that they are bad or wrong as a person can further lead to harmful behaviours being acted out towards others as a defence against these feelings of shame. This can involve further aggression, envious attacks towards others, and bullying. Now, you can help the child who bullies to develop a sense of empathy by proactively encouraging them to think about and imagine the impact that their behaviours have had, whilst also encouraging self-reflection as to why they may have wanted to hurt the other person. When thinking about envy and the need to disown the hated aspects of self by spoiling another person's happiness or enjoyment, making them feel as bad as the bully feels themselves, we can explore healthy and therapeutic ways where the bully can receive support with their own difficulties rather than having to act out harmfully towards another person. Family therapy or seeing a child psychotherapist can be useful ways to achieve this. Now, whilst consequences are important for developing appropriate remorse and learning and understanding of their behaviours, it's also vital to consider not just the behaviour that the child who bullies is exhibiting, but also what lies beneath this. So some useful questions to consider might be, what is their behaviour a communication of? What is the origin of their anger, pain, fear, sense of inadequacy or lack? How can you best support the child in feeling safe, loved, supported and nurtured so that they don't have to act out with envy? And how can you teach them about the value of kindness and acceptance towards others and difference, and also model this in your relational dynamics towards the child, but also within the family home? If you can be firm, hold boundaries, but also demonstrate consistent care, love, curiosity, kindness and attunement to a child, and also help them to make meaning of their feelings, behaviours and beliefs, they will learn to internalise this relational dynamic and cultivate a greater sense of self-esteem and self-compassion so that they do not need to envy or attack others, and indeed can demonstrate this towards others too. Children simply want to be loved and know that they are important, cared about and safe. If we can proactively seek to create this in their environments, both at home and within school, there is hope that they will grow up to love themselves and also develop kindness, empathy and acceptance towards other people.